QI for a show that tonight is all about gardening and groceries, and it's bog-off night at QI. 4 comedians for the price of 2. Cutting the mustard, it's Rob Brydon. And taking the biscuit, it's Dara O'Brien. Spicing things up is David Mitchell. Playing catch-up, it's Alan Davies. But before we head over to the garden to turn over the first sod, let's hear your buzzers. And Rob goes, Dara goes, David goes, and Alan goes.
Pound of panic, pound of panic. Come on, love, got a couple of juicy ones here. Go on, pound of panic.
Thank you, thank you. So let's get off to an easy start. What tools do you need for do-nothing gardening?
No tools.
You think? It's also called natural gardening or natural farming. It's an Eastern version of our organic farming that has actually spread around the world.
You sort of have to dig with your hands or persuade other animals to do the gardening for you.
Yes, persuade other animals.
So you sort of persuade that a fox, he doesn't want a sort of den, but a rockery.
Well, in the case of paddy
get some
fields...
fish in and they desperately try and dig a pond before they die.
Well, fish is right. Well, in paddy fields, where, as I say, it started in the East, they use ducks instead of herbicide. They eat the weeds. The throttly things that kill the rice, and they use carp as well to help purify and keep the water in the paddy fields good. Now, I've got some props for you, which is more connected with the principle of the gentleman gardener, which was a familiar 18th and 19th century pastime, to be a gentleman gardener. You can have that or pass it on. There you are, and on your side, you've got props. Isn't it exciting to have props? Physical, actual props. This one. There you are.
I can see where we're going with this.
Yeah. So who's going to go first?
Well, everybody's been given fascinating devices, and I've been given a bottle with the top cut off.
That was designed by George Stephenson of the rocket fame. Was it? The first locomotive, yeah.
And it's to do with the garden?
It is to do with the garden. He was a very keen gardener.
What did he make most money out of? That or the... the train?
I think the train was a bigger hit.
Right.
But he was a very keen gentleman gardener.
I bet he was really tedious and wouldn't talk about the train in interviews and would insist on talking about his bloody...
I feel you're right.
In many ways, it's the work I'm proudest of. Yeah, but it's crap. It's just a bit of glass with no top.
Well,
it would protect some
You've got sunlight, I think, is an important factor here, the sunlight, because we've got glass. And what does glass do? It can magnify, Stephen, can't it?
Yes, it can.
Diffraction with it, can't we?
Yeah,
okay.
Or refraction.
Refraction, whatever. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's not get bogged down in that.
Yeah, quite.
We're here to talk about gardening.
I'm silly, I'm sorry.
Oh,
hello. No, not... You found out... No.
It's a saw.
It is. It's for a gentleman gardener.
It's got a concealed serrated blade. You won't get this through customs. I can hijack a plane with one of these. I can't make it work, though. Why won't it go forwards? It'll only go that way.
Well, that's how you start the stroke.
That's how you start sawing.
It won't go back again.
Have you ever used a saw?
I don't think it's designed for exercise books.
No, there is that too. David has a point. It's for the gentleman No!
I want to saw something now.
These belong. I just want to say... These have been lent to us by the Garden Museum.
It works, it works.
Oh, it really does!
Oh, my God!
It doesn't break.
I'll tell you what, I really wish wish they hadn't made this set out of asbestos.
Brilliant.
That's a very good invention.
It's for the gentleman who's walking along and he sees an overhanging limb of a tree or overhanging limb of a person, for that matter, and decides to... Oh, no! What have I done? No! That's... Oh.
It's only plastic.
Yeah. And see if you can tidy it away, class. See if you can do that. It's my clever psychology.
Clever, isn't it?
Let's see if you're clever enough to hide that sore. Brilliant.
Well, that was great fun. You got any more?
No, well, David, you've got yours.
Well, yes, I don't know. I mean, it's like...
Yours actually is missing a piece. The Garden Museum, to whom we're very grateful for lending us these incredibly valuable artefacts, this would have had a sort of hat in order to make it like a walking stick, a sort of leathern thing around there.
Oh, so you could hold it like that?
You hold it as a walking stick, and then when you see some obtrusive weeds, you turn it around, and almost like a golf club, you...
Just a little hoe.
Yeah, you just hoe.
Yeah.
A little hoe.
Yeah.
Not in the street sense
No.
that's used in the United States and America.
Which is the sense I usually use that syllable in.
Yes, absolutely. So, talking of hoes, Rob.
It doesn't...
Oh, hello.
Sorry,
How did that happen?
a fly landed on my buzzer and I tried to use my little hoe.
My little hoe. It's a new sort of toy for children,
Yeah.
isn't it? So what's your little hoe for?
Well, I've absolutely no idea, other than I think it's something to do with light.
Well, it's not bad. It actually forces a shape. What sort of shape would something in there have to be?
A bottle.
Oh, a vegetable.
It would have to be a straight vegetable, though, wouldn't it?
So
Oh.
it's for cucumbers.
For cucumbers, for growing straight cucumbers.
Points and I've mended my walking stick.
Yes, points all round for Alan Davis. There you are.
Now, that thing up there, though, Stephen, it may well be for cucumbers, but that picture there is very similar to a spam email that I get sent. And I have to say, I'll tell you now, don't waste your money, it doesn't work.
Dara, what have you got?
I am guessing that you put a mixture of seeds in of different sizes, because there are little holes of different sizes, and then if you're the kind of person who knows what size seed you need, then you just sprinkle it.
You're
In the most
exactly...
effete gardening way imaginable. There you go. And we're in the company of which actual gardens would be going, oh, well done, my lad, that's really top-quality gardening you're doing there.
I'm rather exhausted now. I think I may have to go in and have a cocktail.
I'm having a fit of the vapours from my gardening.
So, do nothing gardening, where we started, is small-scale organic farming with minimal inputs. Now, where's the best place in the world to discover an entirely new species?
The National Geographic Channel.
Maybe.
They're at the forefront.
Do you think you might spot something on the edge of shot that the documentary makers have? See, they're going on about that monkey or whatever, but that's a totally new sort of caterpillar.
What about the Amazon rainforest, where they're discovering new things all the time? Kent.
Yes, that would do.
Kent?
Kent would do. Basically, your own garden. You may say, no, how? There won't be anything in my garden that hasn't been discovered. You would be amazed. In 1971, Jennifer Owen, a biologist, did a very long-term study of her ordinary garden in a suburban house in Leicester. She discovered 533 species of ichneumon wasp. Just that family of parasitic wasps. 15 of these had never been recorded in Britain. 4 of them were completely new to science in a suburban garden. So in your garden, if you have a garden, there will be things. Gilbert White, the naturalist, said, nature is so full and so varied that if you want to find the place with the most variety, it's the place you most study. It almost doesn't matter. Just take a piece of land and look at it hard enough, you will see things that...
Still going rainforest, I'm sorry.
Yes, but you'd have to travel thousands of miles, you'd have to park there, you'd have to look, you'd have to, you know...
Park?
The point... Well, yes.
Everyone knows it's a nightmare parking.
I'm slightly worried that my brain let me say that.
Where am I going to park?
The congestion charge alone would just make drives up the cost of research horrendous.
Nonetheless.
How did she catch these wasps? Did she put a jam jar with jam in it and a little hole that's big enough for them to get in but not get back out? Because that's what we do in our house.
Do you?
Every wasp likes a bit of jam because it's sweet. They love sugary things, as do I.
You know when you find a bee and it's crawling on its last legs?
I always rescue them.
You give it honey. It's the only thing they eat. Makes sense when you think about it. No point just talking to it, give it honey.
They're very much a one-recipe species,
All
aren't they?
I'm intrigued because I generally give it the sole of my shoe, but you know, not to be harsh, but you know, I think
Tread on a struggling, crawling bee,
Yeah,
trying to get back to the
Why?
hive.
What? As opposed to rehabilitate it?
I
nursing it
like
back
honey.
to
I have
life.
it on my porridge, you murderer.
Yeah, but
You depend on bees.
We need the bees.
okay. So in future, I should lure the bee back. And sorry, do I get a syringe of honey, just a tiny amount of honey? How do I feed
pipette.
this
Spoon of honey,
disabled
leave
bee?
it with the honey, don't tread on it. It should be criminal
but-
offence.
but-
You should be arrested. You should be locked up, you know where? In a hive.
But isn't it true, though, that a bee in his entire lifetime makes an absolutely tiny amount of honey overall? I mean, just a
But they're just
minute
lots
amount
of
of
them,
honey.
yeah, but
they're
So you
team
don't
players.
have to give much rehabilitating honey to this one bee
So
before the nation, the world, is making a
becomes
net
diabetic.
loss from that bee. You know, it's useless. If you only get 1 teaspoon of honey from a whole bee's lifetime, and every time we have to get it back on its feet, it takes a teaspoon and a half, suddenly there's no honey at all.
This is more honey than this bee has seen in its life.
Yeah.
It's just gonna
You're insulting it, apart from
Maybe
anything
give
else.
it-
It's like showing a very tired mason a whole cathedral.
Maybe...
Well, let's say that you're in between Alan and Dara. So, like Alan, you want to help the bee give it honey, but like Dara, you also want to kill. what you can do is you get what I would term too much honey, and you see the bee and you pour molten. Look, hear me out.
All right, okay.
And then you watch him die a slow as he.
Yeah, I carry on with... Oh! Yes, I've now heard you out.
Yes.
And it's no better.
Well, no, that's
worse. That's much worse than what I did.
Torturing
You're
a
being
bee.
humane, are you?
Yeah, I am being-
You're not. You're getting a kick out of it.
Let's forget
I'm
that.
not drowning the bee ironically in honey. You want some honey?
bee.
You want some honey?
You can't
How much
drown
honey
them.
do you want? Is this too much honey? How strange.
Not so keen on the honey now, are you, after your lifetime making honey?
Very good. Well, thank you for that interesting, fierce, and I think productive debate. Very pleased with that. We're going to move on now, but the best place, as you didn't quite point out, to find a new species or plant or animal is in your back garden. Who finds garden gnomes attractive?
I do, and it's lovely. It's lovely to get the opportunity to be able to admit it in public.
Good. Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
We knew you too well, Rob. We knew that an Anne Widdecombe gnome would just immediately appeal to you. When did gnomes first arrive in British gardens, do you know?
1922.
But earlier than that, actually. 1847. And there was a strange man called Charles Isham, who was a vegetarian spiritualist, who believed that putting ornamental garden gnomes into a garden would attract real gnomes. That was his
Did he wish
sad
to try
point.
and kill real gnomes?
No, he wanted
he was
to
trying to
commune with
entrap
them. He wanted to
real
commune with
men.
them. He said seeing and hearing gnomes is not mental delusion, but extension of faculty.
It's a nice try, isn't it? It's lovely being clever when you're mental.
Yes. This man, Charles Isham, he introduced 21 porcelain gnomes, of which one still exists, and there it is. It's the original garden gnome in the first one ever. It's been insured for some £1 million. The red cap, which is a feature of all gnomes, it seems, and you may think there is a family resemblance to that chap and Doc or one of the other dwarves in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and they were based on this idea that German gnomes, or whatever you want to call them, dwarves, had these red caps because they were miners, and German miners wore red caps. There were in Wastwater or Wastwater in the Lake District. There were at 48 metres, there were a whole load of gnomes set
divers,
deep
yeah.
down for divers to look at. 3 people drowned, apparently, trying to go and look for them, so the police came and took them away. And the gnome garden was put back at 50 metres this time deep, just 2 metres deeper, and the police didn't take it away. Can you imagine why that would be? If they took it away when it was 48 metres and 3 people had drowned, why would they then leave it? When
Maybe
it was...
it's a visibility thing.
Good effort, but no. It's too far for the police divers. The police divers, health and safety people won't let the police dive that low. So the police couldn't recover them from that depth.
That is funny, actually.
It is. It somehow is.
Can you imagine, though, if you're able to, you know, and you don't mind the sort of risk, why would you choose to do it in a place where instead of seeing, you know, a coral reef or fantastic wonders of the deep, all you can see is some manky old gnomes?
I think the idea was that the lake was incredibly dull and that people who were practicing diving, it was just something to make the little bit brighter and more interesting.
In the dive centre in Leicester, there's a big quarry, and they've put an old aeroplane in it and a bus.
Yeah. Of course, in Scarpa Flow, there's a scuttled German fleet for you to go and investigate, if you wanted to.
That was the
A bit chilly.
end of the war, end of the First World War, wasn't it?
that's right.
The Allies were all arguing about who were to get this fleet, and we wanted to have the fleet because we had the biggest fleet, and so it made sense to us that we
And
should
Mummy
have.
said, if you're going to argue about it, then no one will get the
Yeah.
fleet. And it was scuttled.
I didn't know that we sunk the French fleet.
We did, yes. That was much to the annoyance of Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the Germans would have got hold of it.
Also, you don't get many opportunities to sink the French fleet. And, you know, when the French fleet is just sitting there and it's not going to return
It was
fire,
more of an old English
it's just, you kind of go, look, we've got the French fleet, it's just there. I've got to sink it. We never mind that we're at war with Germany, but still, it's the French fleet. We will kick ourselves.
Where was the French fleet when this happened?
Oh, it was off the coast of Morocco?
Why didn't you
somewhere
just sail it to England?
We said sail it to England. It was full of French sailors who refused to sail
Yeah.
it to England, as they always will.
Well, and option B was, well, let's just sink the boat
Yeah.
then. How was that not explained to them that the only other option was...
The third option was to drown them in honey, but we couldn't couldn't get enough honey there in time, so...
Yeah, a black chapter amongst many other black chapters in that sad, melancholy period of history, the war. But on that melancholy note, the man who brought garden gnomes to England did so in the hope of attracting some real gnomes to his garden. Why do American farmers, gentlemen, hate Shakespeare? There's a picture of American farmers hating Shakespeare. Something to do with Shakespeare caused immense trouble to American farming. It's not Shakespeare's fault at all.
Not some farming practice that's hidden away in the sonnets or something.
It was an eccentric drug manufacturer called Eugene Schieffelin, and he decided that America should contain examples of every bird species named in the works of Shakespeare. And one particular species didn't exist in America. And he thought, oh, I'll introduce these. He introduced 100 to Central Park, and there are now estimated something like 200 million of them.
It's not the common pigeon, is it?
No, they come in huge flocks.
Geese,
Starlings.
ducks.
Starlings is the right
Starlings.
answer. Starlings.
And they don't like them because they eat the seeds?
Unfortunately, what they do is they befoul everything in their droppings that they don't eat. They're such huge flocks. Vast flocks.
I was on Brighton Pier one time,
Yeah.
and there are lots of starlings there, and at dusk they do that.
They're beautiful.
And it's really amazing to watch
Yeah, it's a
if you stand
wonderful
on the
sight.
pier. And then someone said that starlings come from hundreds of miles away to join in this
The flock.
coastal flocking.
Yeah.
And they come from as far away as Germany and Poland.
A
and
lot
fly
of the Polish
around
ones are coming
Anima.
over here now and taking away a lot of the... a lot of the British starlings' jobs. You'll see a lot of British starlings just sat on the prom like this, come bloody typical.
Yeah, but they're the lazy British starlings who don't want to
Yeah,
work.
why don't they just get up and join in, you know? But they won't, will they? It's typical, typical.
No, you're right. The flocks are up to 1 million, some of them. I mean, enormous flocks.
Are they just having fun? Or is it a good way of eating?
No, in the case of fish, I know that what they're really doing is presenting, as it were, an enormous fish that sort of glistens and frightens some predators, and in other cases it confuses and dazzles, and they're a lot safer than...
Starlings are basically scared of sharks.
I'm not so sure about the
shark
shocking
might leap out of the West Pier.
You may laugh, but when was a starling last killed by a shark?
That's true.
So it works. You're absolutely right. It's 100%. It is 100% starkly proven that this shall keep us safe from sharks. Come on, boys. Boom. And they're like that way.
So, good, excellent. Starlings were brought to America in an attempt to introduce all the birds in Shakespeare to the US. They're now a major pest, which is correct of these grocers, or grocers. It's grocers apostrophe. Why does this annoy people?
They're all right.
Well, of course, they're all conceivably right, aren't they?
Well, is it
But
all
it's just a way of asking whether you care about apostrophes.
Well, the grocer's apostrophe is supposed to be like...
They put them in where they shouldn't be, supposedly. They put, like, potatoes and put an apostrophe there or something.
This doesn't bother you, does it?
It doesn't bother me.
It
no.
bothers me.
Does it? Yeah, it bothers some people, yeah. Some people
not
write
like genocide.
books and get incredibly annoyed and they form societies for the protection of the
all stupid,
apostrophe
yeah.
and...
There's one actually in Dublin, I don't know if it's a grocer, but something like that, and it's G-R-O-C-E-R, and then there's a comma, and then the S. And you go, you knew something had to go in there. You knew something had to go in there, but you couldn't. And it's like, it looks like a dead apostrophe. It looks like... But this guy had printed the sign. He'd obviously written out the sign
that is
and then
sad,
gone
I
to a
know.
sign printing company who went,
That's
yeah,
it,
right,
that's
whatever.
what Sign printing companies, you'd think one of the requirements of being a sign printing company is having a basic knowledge of where an apostrophe goes.
They know, I'm convinced. All sign writing companies know, for example, how to spell accommodation. They must. And I reckon when they say, OK, we're doing a sign for your guest house, would you like our normal service, or would you like our deluxe gold 5 times the price service? Well, we'll check your spelling for you. And everyone goes, no, it's all right, I'm not going to pay 5 times as much for you to check the spelling. They go, OK. Inevitably, OK, we're going to paint the word accommodation the way you've put it there, are we? In the knowledge that they'll have to get called back all the sooner when the people finally realise they've got it wrong. It's just every time you see accommodation properly painted and misspelt, the sign writer knew. Was bloody minded. He'd putting it out there wrong, knowing he'd get a repeat gig all
You
the
can see
sooner.
how long he's been looking for a flat.
There are very few situations in which this is vital. There are very few times that you will run in and go, where are the grocers? And they go, well, there's only me. But your sign implied that there was more than one grocer.
Exactly. You're so
I'm
right.
looking for 3 grocers.
Yes, that's the minimum I need in this situation, not just one.
People have been ridiculing what's called the grocer's apostrophe since the 18th century. The Oxford Companion to the English Language notes that there was never a golden age in which the rules for the use of the possessive apostrophe in English were clear-cut and known, understood and followed by most educated people. Never. So some people have actually, like Birmingham, have abolished the apostrophe.
Oh, yes, I read about this.
Now, are there any places in America where they have an apostrophe?
Well, they have places that are called Something's Creek.
Yeah.
Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, for example. Only 5 places in the whole United States have an apostrophe. One you might have heard of is quite well known. It's a tourist resort on the East Coast, a very upmarket, shishi place in New England.
Martha's Vineyard.
Martha's Vineyard is the right answer.
That has an apostrophe.
And there are 4 others.
Dave's Vineyard.
Martha's Garden, Martha's Kitchen.
There's Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts. There's Ike's Point, New Jersey. The captions are nowhere near where the places are. John E's Pond, Rhode Island. Carlos Elmer's Joshua View, Arizona. Clark's Mountain, Oregon. And those are the only ones.
So everywhere else they said don't bother with the apostrophe.
Yeah.
It's just confusing. Makes it
It
not
seems
look like
so.
a place name.
Yeah, it would seem so.
I wouldn't bother with Carlos Elmer's. Joshua View works fine, doesn't it? Why the hell do you need to have Carlos
Carlos
Elmer's
Joshua
specific view of Joshua? Pick Joshua up, let's all have a look at him. We'd all take Carlos Elmer's view of
Fine
this.
view of
Yeah.
Joshua. Anyway, there you are. That's enough apostrophe. Many people are annoyed, apparently, by punctuation errors in signs, but others claim that the grocers are at the forefront of the evolution of language. How can you be sure that an apple isn't actually a pear without tasting it or opening it up?
Oh, some apples get deformed into a sort of pear-shaped way.
There are round pears. I mean, that obviously is a very pear-like one on the right there. That's clearly a pear, I think. But there are round ones.
Is it that you can't do that twisting thing with an apple?
I think pear stems do tend to come off more quickly, don't they? But there's a really interesting way, and that is...
One floats and one doesn't
Which
float.
one floats?
Apples float.
Apples float.
Apples float, is it?
Dunk apples.
Bobbing for apples, exactly. And it's better work. I'm going to be so embarrassed if it doesn't.
Oh, it's like Brainiac.
Whoa! Float!
Wow, it's gone really big.
floats.
Wow, why is that?
A pear.
That's a weird-looking pear.
That's dare you.
That's wrong. Okay.
Oh,
Six.
son.
There you are. It seems that the pear is denser. It's somehow odd. You think of them as sweeter and lighter and so on, but actually they're just structurally more dense. And you may try this at home and get a floating pear or a...
Don't go to a green
Or a
grocer's.
sinking apple, but please don't write in. Write to the British Apostrophe Society. They'd love to know about it.
Someone invites you to play a game of pair bobbing.
Basically,
They're trying to drown you.
Walk away!
apparently up at Ullswater, they did pair bobbing at about 50 metres.
Yes.
The police decided not to do it.
Invited a load of strangely dressed dwarves. Pair bobbing.
Yes.
But oddly enough, I'm going to put this back down here now. Oddly enough, the oldest variety of apple in England is called a...
Granny Smith, Bramley, Cox.
No, a pearmain. And now it's time for 5 items or fewer of general ignorance. Fingers on buzzers. What are trees made of?
Wood.
Is the right answer. Yes, well done. Well done. You see? And what is wood made of?
Carbon.
Yes. And where does the carbon come from?
The Earth.
The earth?
Yeah.
No, you'd think most of what makes a tree was drawn up from the soil in nutrients.
It's air, is it?
It's actually the vast majority of everything that makes a tree comes from the air, yeah. Photosynthesis, which breaks down the air and leaves the carbon. And that's the carbon that makes a tree, so it is made of carbon. It's quite surprising, isn't it? Yeah. Good. What makes Australian spiders so dangerous?
It's their cunning and their organisation, Stephen. And the fact they're willing to put the man-hours in. They will stalk you for weeks. They'll look for patterns in your behaviour, and they'll strike when you least expect it. Just as you're hovering over a poorly bee, holding a shoe high, that's when they'll come and bite you in the bum.
You mean the spider is working with the bee?
Yes. The bee is saying, there's not much longer left for me, but you can have a bit of fun here. Come on. Come in and bite him.
So is it that they sort of hide in loos?
Well, not deliberately, but the only real danger they seem to threat these days, since 1981, when anti-venoms were introduced all around Australia, there are 2 very poisonous types. There's the redback and the funnel web, the famous
Redback's
funnel
Is
web.
it people's reaction?
There's the redback.
Is it the way that people...
Yeah, that no one has died from a spider bite since 1981.
Yeah.
No one in Australia. But people have been in accidents, which have been fatal, some of them, and certainly have caused enormous damage from spiders that have dropped out of sun visors in cars and fallen on people, and they go, "Ugh," like that, and then crashed. So that's their danger now, oddly enough, not their venom. And so it's time for our guests to reap what they have sown. I'm going to have a look at the old scoreboard. Oh, my good night. It's a tie for first place, ladies and gentlemen. It hasn't happened for a very long time. Not since all round here was green fields. And in first place, it's the 2 Ds with 3 points each, Dara and David. Congratulations. In a very craveable third place, smelling of roses still, at -6 is Rob Brydon. But going down to the bottom of the garden to eat worms with -8 is Alan Davis. So that's it from Rob, Dara, David, Alan and me, and I leave you with this quotation from Eric Morecambe. My neighbour asked if he could use my lawnmower, and I told him of course he could, so long as he didn't take it out of my garden. Thank you and good night.
Alexander Armstrong joins regulars Paul Merton and Ian Hislop as guest hosts for tomorrow's Have I Got News For You?